My name is Gabe, and welcome to Hold That Thought, a companion piece series to potentially any video we may make on this channel. So last week I tried to straighten out my thoughts on the series Supernatural, and while doing that I kind of got caught up in a rant about the show's insistence on having a spin-off. And it kind of got me thinking, what should they have done in order to make this supposed spin-off? So I, and my ever-trusty editor, will lay our 2 cents on the table and see if we can figure this one out. Now, keep in mind, I still haven't watched the last season of Supernatural. However, the discussion about spin-offs was never really about the last season, or at least wasn't really taking place during the last season. And for this scenario, we're going to imagine we're still fairly early into the show's run, while still referencing stuff from later where necessary. Right, now let's get started. Fair point, and an obvious place to start. Supernatural never needed spin-offs. Obviously, it was studio execs' insistence due to the show's popularity. But they could have just let it be. But that's no fun. So ignoring the obvious answer of having no spin-offs, let's discuss what they could have done. Okay, before we can even entertain the idea, we need to figure out what actually makes a good spin-off. Okay, so the first and most obvious is internal consistency. This doesn't mean that thing we spent about 10 years doing, do it again exactly the same. That's frankly boring, repetitive, boring, and audiences will wonder why you didn't have this be a part of or continue the main show. What this more means is the shared elements, which in order to be a spin-off you must have at least some, should be the same across both or any amount of shows. This often applies to geography, if both take place in the same location. Any shared characters should retain their backstory, personality, and appearance where possible. In Supernatural's case, this would be mainly about how the various supernatural elements work. The show spent its entire run establishing rule after rule about how various monsters and other supernatural elements function. If a potential spin-off decided to, let's say, ignore every rule possible, then yeah, we're going to have problems. Our second point is contrast. Now, this is where things get a little tough. As I kind of said in the first point, we don't want to just release the same show twice. Not many would want to watch characters go through the same story beats and the same arcs that other characters already did. It's boring. We also don't want them to go on the exact same adventures. Ultimately, what this means is our supposed spin-off needs a different tone than the original. In Supernatural's case, a few elements we can come to note are the road trip nature of the show and the dark stakes that seem to doom every side character to an uncertain fate. Our final, and in my opinion, most vital point, and the reason I think backdoor pilots are a bad idea. Our show needs to ultimately be able to stand on its own. This is the hardest point to truly do, and I'll be the first to admit it's possible to make a show that literally doesn't do this and still have it be good and enjoyable to fans of the original show. But therein lies the rub. A good spin-off isn't just going to siphon fans of the original to the new one. It's also going to bring new fans to the original show. What this actually means is, if to enjoy one show I have to have seen the other, well, more likely as a new viewer, I'm not going to watch either. So these are the rules for a good spin-off. So let's design our potential Supernatural spin-off with these rules in mind. Our first rule, consistency. We need to make sure every creature both series share, and they should share a majority, function identically in both series. That's fairly easy to do, alright? The second rule, contrast. This show needs to be a generally lighter show, to contrast with Supernatural's generally darker tones. So we should make death an extreme rarity if it happens at all. And stakes should be low, at the very least a particular degree smaller, and of course standing on its own. I should be able to introduce this show by its own merits without having to explain the seasons worth of supernatural lore that already exists. So, here's my pitch. Looking at elements of supernatural, let's first have our spin-off set in one location consistently. Maybe a small town where, for whatever reason, supernatural elements are more at the forefront. Since we're not going to go as dark or character kill-happy, we can focus on an ensemble cast of characters. Maybe have this be a sitcom or more comedic-focused anyways. The characters will still fight monsters, but it's not really going to be the main focus of the show. Since a lot of monsters have been shown to be equally capable of good and bad, like demons, angels, vampires, and werewolves, let's take advantage of that to have them play the role of our cast. Have them all, for whatever reason, love this small town and want to protect it. Play with some of the silly ideas that Supernatural touched on but never explored. There was a point in Supernatural where an angel had a crush on a demon. Ultimately, they never actually did anything with it, but you could have that be an actual relationship we explore in this show. Of course, we can still have a hunter character, and either have them as a parody of the Winchesters or other hunters we've seen throughout Supernatural, or, in contrast, have them be a former hunter who ultimately decided to stop and retire, but will offer their skills and equipment when absolutely needed to protect the town. And this is what I believe would have been the ultimate Supernatural spin-off. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear some of your most enjoyed or hated spin-offs, and how they prove my logic or go against it. But either way, if you liked this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more like it, do subscribe. But, more importantly than any of that, have a good night.